Hi Reddit. My name is Daniel, and I never thought I'd find myself here, laying my heart bare to strangers. Life has a funny way of humbling you, of stripping away every certainty you thought you possessed. A year ago, I believed I had it all: a stable career, a home filled with warmth, and most importantly, a wife I adored. Her name was Emily. She wasn't just my spouse. She was my best friend, my unwavering anchor in this chaotic world. Or so my heart had been convinced. The unraveling began in the most unremarkable fashion. There were no cataclysmic fights, no dramatic red flags flapping in the wind. Just a slow, imperceptible drift. Emily started to retreat into herself. Initially, I dismissed it as the crushing weight of stress from her demanding marketing job, assuming the long hours were wearing her down. But the space between us grew into something I couldn't ignore, something I couldn't put my finger on. She stopped asking about my day. Our laughter, the kind that used to echo through our little house, was replaced by a heavy, awkward silence. She'd spend more and more evenings out, claiming meetings with coworkers or late nights at the office. I remember one specific Friday night. I'd made her favorite dinner, spaghetti carbonara, and even lit candles, desperate to recapture a fragment of what felt lost. But Emily never came home. I texted, I called, nothing. When she finally walked through the door just before midnight, she looked startled to see me. Work ran late, she mumbled, her eyes avoiding mine. A faint scent of cologne, a stranger's scent, clung to her. I wanted to confront her, to scream for answers, but a paralyzing fear of what I might hear held my tongue. Instead, I let the doubt fester, allowing it to gnaw at me day after day. Days bled into weeks, and the chasm between us widened. Then, one quiet evening, as we sat on opposite ends of the couch, she delivered the words that shattered my world. I think we need a break, Daniel. Her voice was steady, emotionless, as if she had rehearsed the line 100 times in her head. I asked her why, begged her to tell me what had gone wrong. She just shook her head and offered the tired, old cliché. It's not you, it's me. I need time to figure things out. A week later, she was gone. She packed her things while I was at work, leaving behind a short, sterile note on the kitchen counter. I'm sorry, Daniel. I hope you can forgive me someday. For months, I was a ghost in my own life, trapped in a relentless loop of trying to understand. What had I done? Was I too boring, too predictable? I replayed every shared moment, every memory, searching for a clue I had missed. My friends told me to move on, to let her go. But how do you release someone who was once your entire universe? Then, as if from another lifetime, Emily's name appeared in my inbox a year later. The subject line read, I owe you the truth. I stared at it for what felt like hours, my heart hammering against my ribs. What truth? What could she possibly say now, after everything? I hesitated, knowing the contents of that email could either bring me closure or tear open every wound all over again. When I finally clicked it open, my hands were trembling. It felt like I was looking into a portal to a past I had been trying so hard to bury. The first lines were a punch to the gut. Hi, Daniel. I know this email might come as a surprise, but I've been thinking about you a lot lately. There's something I need to tell you, something I've owed you for a long time. Please just hear me out. The audacity of it. The woman who left me broken and hollow now claimed she had something to make right. A part of me screamed to slam my laptop shut and delete the email, but a desperate curiosity, or maybe some lingering, unprocessed pain, kept me reading. I know I hurt you. I didn't just walk away from our marriage, I ran. And I need you to know it wasn't because of you. You were a good husband, Daniel. You were kind, thoughtful, and steady. But I wasn't. I wasn't any of those things, and I hated myself for it. The words blurred on the screen as my eyes welled up. I thought I'd cried all the tears I could over Emily, but here they were again, fresh and burning. She went on to describe feeling lost, suffocated by the stability I thought was our greatest strength. She spoke of needing freedom and finding her true self. Then came the line that made my stomach drop. I wasn't honest with you about everything back then. There's something you don't know, something you deserve to know. I stopped reading. My heart raced, a frantic drum against my ribs, and my pulse pounded in my ears. What could she possibly mean? Was this her way of admitting she'd been unfaithful? Had I spent a year mourning a relationship that was a lie all along? I forced myself to continue. Her words were a mix of apologies and vague hints, never stating the truth outright. Instead, she wrote, "If you're willing, I'd like to meet and talk in person. There's too much to say for an email. I understand if you hate me, but I hope you'll give me a chance to explain everything." That word, everything, hung in my mind like a storm cloud. What hadn't she told me? I replayed every memory. The late nights she'd stayed out, the excuses that didn't quite add up, the note she'd left that was devoid of any real explanation. Was this my one chance to finally get the answers I'd been searching for? I didn't reply right away. I couldn't. I just sat in silence, staring at my laptop as if it might offer some guidance. The thought of seeing her again after all she put me through was both terrifying and strangely tempting. What would I even say? Would I scream, cry, beg for answers, or simply tell her to get out of my life for good? That night, I barely slept. Her email replayed in my mind over and over, each sentence cutting deeper than the last. By morning, I knew I couldn't ignore it. I had to know the truth, no matter how much it might hurt. I replied with a simple message. When and where? She responded within minutes. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. The coffee shop on Main Street. I'll be there. I felt a mix of dread and anticipation. Tomorrow, I'd come face to face with the woman who shattered my world. Tomorrow, I'd finally hear her side of the story. And tomorrow, I'd uncover the truth she'd been hiding for so long. The coffee shop was one of those small, cozy places that Emily used to love. Soft lighting, shelves filled with books, the faint scent of cinnamon in the air. I hadn't been there since we were still together, back when everything felt normal. Waiting for her brought back a flood of memories I'd tried so hard to bury. I kept glancing at the door, unsure if I wanted her to show up or hoped she'd back out. But right on time, she walked in. Emily looked different. She wore a simple dress and her hair was tied back, with no makeup except for a faint hint of lipstick. She looked older, tired, as if the past year had taken a heavy toll on her. She spotted me and hesitated, as if she was just as unsure about this meeting as I was. Then, with a slow determination, she walked over and sat down. "Hi, Daniel," she said softly. Her voice was steady, but I saw her hands trembling as she reached for the coffee cup in front of her. "Emily," I replied, my voice colder than I intended. I didn't know how to act, how to feel. Seeing her again stirred up emotions I wasn't ready to confront. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence hung heavy between us, broken only by the quiet murmurs of the other patrons. Finally, she took a deep breath. "Thank you for meeting me," she began. "I know I don't deserve it." "You don't," I said bluntly. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. She flinched, but nodded. "You're right. But I need to tell you the truth. The whole truth. About why I left and what I did." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "I'm listening." Emily hesitated, her eyes darting to the table as if she couldn't bear to look at me. When I asked for space, when I said I needed time to figure things out, that wasn't the whole truth. I didn't just leave because I was confused or unhappy. I left because I was seeing someone else. There it was. The words I'd been dreading, the confirmation of what I'd suspected but never wanted to believe. My chest tightened, and a lump formed in my throat, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Who?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated again, then said, "His name is Brian. He was someone I worked with." It started as friendly conversations, but then it became more. I closed my eyes, the name hitting me like a physical slap. Brian. I remembered her mentioning him a few times when we were still together, her work buddy. The one who always had a funny story. I should have seen it back then, but I didn't want to be the jealous husband. "How long?" I asked, my voice sharp. Emily looked down, guilt etched across her face. "A few months before I left. I didn't mean for it to happen, Daniel. I swear I didn't. But it did. And I was too much of a coward to tell you." I wanted to scream, to throw my coffee cup across the room, to demand why she hadn't come to me, why she hadn't tried to fix what we had instead of running to someone else. But all I could manage was, "Why are you telling me this now?" She looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Because it ended. Brian and we didn't last. And after it was over, I realized what I'd thrown away. I've spent the past year trying to convince myself I made the right choice, but I didn't. I destroyed our marriage, Daniel. I destroyed you. And I'm sorry." Her voice cracked on the last word, and for a moment, she looked like the Emily I used to know, the one I loved with all my heart. But that Emily was gone, replaced by a stranger I barely recognized. "I don't know what you expect me to say," I said, my voice empty. You made your choice. You didn't just hurt me. You broke me. And now you want what? Forgiveness. No, she said quickly. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect you to care. I needed you to know. I needed to face what I did. I didn't know what to feel. Anger, sadness, pity, maybe all of it. But one thing was clear. The woman across from me was not the person I had married. She was a stranger, and her painful truth didn't change the fact that she had left me to pick up the pieces of a life she had shattered. As I stood up to leave, she reached for my hand. Daniel, wait. There's one more thing. I looked down at her, my heart heavy with dread. What now? Her voice was barely a whisper. I never stopped loving you. I froze. Her words hung in the air like a heavy weight, pressing down on my chest. A year of silence, a year of heartbreak, and now she wanted to drop this on me? I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or just walk out without a word. Don't, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Don't say that, Emily. You don't get to say that. Her eyes brimmed with tears, but I didn't care. Not this time. For once, she needed to feel even a fraction of the pain she had caused me. She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up my hand. You don't get to tell me you still love me after what you did. You lied to me. You cheated on me, and then you left me like I meant nothing to you. Do you even understand what you put me through? My voice cracked despite my best efforts to stay composed. She looked down, unable to meet my gaze. I do, Daniel. I do. And it kills me every day. I don't expect you to believe me, but I never stopped loving you. I was just so lost. I made the worst mistake of my life, and I've been trying to live with it ever since. I shook my head, my fists clenched. Lost. You call betraying your husband being lost. Do you even realize what it felt like to come home to an empty house? To spend every night wondering what I did wrong? To second-guess every memory we ever made together? You didn't just cheat, Emily. You destroyed me. Her tears spilled over, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. For the first time since she walked out, I was finally letting out all the pain I had bottled up. You said you needed space, that it wasn't about me. I continued, my voice rising. But it was never about figuring things out, was it? It was about him. Brian. The man you thought was worth throwing away everything we had. I know, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I know. I can't undo what I did, Daniel. I wanted you to know the truth. You deserve that much. I sat back down, my body trembling with anger and exhaustion. Why now? I asked, my tone bitter. Why tell me all of this now? What do you expect me to do with this information? She wiped her tears, struggling to compose herself. Because I couldn't keep living with the lies. I thought if I told you the truth, maybe it would help you move on. Move on, I repeated, laughing bitterly. You think hearing that the woman I loved was sneaking around behind my back is going to help me move on? You're unbelievable. Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. There's more, she said suddenly, her voice breaking the silence. I didn't just come here to tell you about the affair. There's something else I need to say. I stared at her, my patience wearing thin. What else could there possibly be? Emily, you've already admitted to breaking our vows. What more is there to ruin? She took a deep breath, her hands clutching the edge of the table as if bracing herself for the weight of her own words. I ended things with Brian shortly after I left you, she said quietly. He wasn't who I thought he was. He used me, Daniel. And when it was over, I realized what I'd done, what I'd lost. Her voice faltered, but she forced herself to continue. And then, a few months ago, I found out something that made everything worse. I didn't know how to tell you, but I can't keep it a secret anymore. My heart sank. What could possibly be worse than what she had already told me? I braced myself for the next blow, my mind racing with possibilities. I'm pregnant, she said, her voice trembling. I don't know if it's his or yours. The room spun. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Her words hit me like a tidal wave, pulling me under with no chance to catch my breath. Pregnant? After everything, she was pregnant. I stared at her, my mind unable to process what she had just said. You're telling me this now. I finally managed to choke out. I didn't know how to tell you, she said, her tears flowing freely. I know how it sounds, Daniel, but I swear I'm telling you the truth now. I thought you deserved to know. Deserved to know? I didn't even know who I was anymore, let alone what I deserved. All I knew was that the woman sitting across from me had turned my entire world upside down for a second time. The words echoed in my head. I'm pregnant. I don't know if it's his or yours. For a moment, I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The air felt heavy, pressing down on my chest, and the sounds of the coffee shop faded into a dull hum. All I could focus on was Emily, sitting across from me, her face pale and tear-streaked. How long have you known? I finally asked, my voice cold and steady, though I felt anything but calm. About 3 months, she admitted, her gaze dropping to her lap. I found out after things with Brian ended. I've been trying to figure out what to do. What to do? I repeated bitterly. You've had 3 months to figure out what to do, but you come to me after a year of silence, after ripping my life apart. Now you think I deserve to know. I was scared, Daniel, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't know how you'd react. I didn't even know if I had the right to tell you after everything I'd done. I let out a hollow laugh. The right? You're carrying a child that could be mine, and you're questioning whether you had the right to tell me? Are you serious right now? She flinched, but I didn't care. I had every right to be angry. This wasn't just about her betrayal anymore. This was about a potential child, my child, a child that could have been conceived while she was cheating on me. The thought made my stomach churn. Is that why you emailed me? I asked, my voice sharp. Because you want me to take responsibility for a situation you created? No, she said quickly, shaking her head. That's not it at all. I thought you should know. If there's even a chance that this baby is yours, you deserve to be a part of their life. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Despite everything, despite the betrayal and the pain, the thought of a child, a part of me out there in the world, stirred something deep inside. But the anger and the hurt were still too raw to let me think clearly. So what now? I asked, leaning back in my chair. Do you want a DNA test? A co-parenting arrangement? Or are you just here to dump this on me and leave like you did before? She wiped her eyes, her hands trembling. I don't know, Daniel. I don't have all the answers. I want to make things right somehow. I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to do better. For the baby. For you. For me. I repeated, laughing bitterly again. Emily, you destroyed my trust, my life, and now you expect me to believe you want to do better for me? Forgive me if I'm not jumping at the chance to play happy family. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said, her voice soft. I don't know what else to do. We sat in silence for what felt like an eternity. My mind was racing, torn between anger, sadness, and something I couldn't quite name. I thought about the life we'd once dreamed of together, the house, the kids, the future that now felt like a cruel joke. And now here she was, asking me to make a decision I wasn't ready to make. Finally, I stood up. I need time to think, I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. You've had months to process this, Emily. Give me at least a few days. She nodded, looking more defeated than I'd ever seen her. Take all the time you need, she said quietly. I'll be here if you want to talk. I didn't respond. I grabbed my coat and walked out of the coffee shop, the crisp autumn air hitting me like a slap to the face. My mind was a mess, filled with questions I didn't have answers to. Was the baby mine? If it was, could I ever co-parent with someone who had shattered my trust so completely? And if it wasn't, what then? As I walked home, I realized something that scared me more than anything else. A part of me still cared. Despite everything, the lies, the betrayal, there was a part of me that still wanted to believe in the woman I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. But could I ever trust her again? And more importantly, could I ever trust myself to make the right choice? The days that followed were some of the longest and most agonizing of my life. I couldn't focus on work, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily's face, heard her trembling voice confessing her betrayal, and her words about the baby echoing in my mind. I didn't tell anyone, not my friends, not my family. How could I? How do you explain to people that the woman who broke your heart might also be carrying your child? It felt too raw, too complicated to share with anyone else. Finally, on the third day, I made a decision. I texted Emily. We need to talk. I want answers. She replied almost immediately, suggesting we meet at her apartment. I hesitated before agreeing. The idea of walking back into her space, a place she now lived in without me, felt strange and painful. But I needed to face this. I couldn't live in limbo any longer. When I arrived, Emily opened the door, looking nervous and exhausted. The apartment was smaller than the home we'd shared, but it was neat and cozy. I noticed little touches that reminded me of her. A stack of books on the coffee table, a scented candle burning on the kitchen counter. It felt oddly familiar and foreign at the same time. "Thanks for coming," she said, her voice soft. She gestured for me to sit, but I stayed standing, my arms crossed. I wasn't here for small talk. "Let's just get to it," I said. "I need to know everything. No more half-truths, no more vague explanations. Start from the beginning." She nodded, wringing her hands nervously as she sat down on the couch. "Okay," she said. "I owe you that." She started with how it all began. The late nights at work, the growing distance between us, and how she'd let herself get swept up in her feelings for Brian. She admitted that she'd known it was wrong, that she'd hated herself for it, but she didn't stop. She painted a picture of a woman who felt trapped and insecure, looking for validation in all the wrong places. "I thought I was unhappy with you, Daniel," she said, tears streaming down her face. I don't even know what I thought. But when I left, I realized I wasn't running away from you. I was running away from myself. I listened in silence, my emotions a mix of anger, sadness, and something I couldn't quite name. Her words felt genuine, but they didn't erase the pain she had caused. They didn't make up for the nights I spent alone, questioning everything about myself and our marriage. "And Brian?" I asked, my voice cold. "What happened with him?" She hesitated before answering. "It didn't take long for me to realize he wasn't what I thought he was," she said. "He was charming and exciting first, but he didn't care about me. Not really. I was just someone to pass the time with. When I told him I was pregnant, he didn't even want to hear it. He said it wasn't his problem." Her voice cracked, and for a moment, I saw the same vulnerability that had drawn me to her in the first place. But it wasn't enough to soften the walls I'd built around my heart. "And now you think the baby might be mine?" I said flatly. She nodded, her hands trembling. "I don't know for sure," she admitted. "That's why I wanted to tell you. Because if there's even a chance, you deserve to know." I took a deep breath, trying to process everything. The betrayal, the lies, the possibility of a child. It was too much, too fast, and I felt like I was drowning in emotions I couldn't control. "Fine," I said finally. "We'll get a paternity test. I need to know the truth." She nodded again, her expression a mix of relief and fear. "Thank you," she whispered. I stood up to leave, my heart heavy but resolute. "This doesn't mean I forgive you," I said, my voice firm. "I just need to know the truth for myself. For the baby. Whatever happens after that, we'll see." As I walked out of her apartment, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The road ahead was still uncertain, but at least now I was moving forward, one step at a time. The next week was one of the longest of my life. Emily and I went to a clinic to get the paternity test done, and then it was just a waiting game. Sitting across from her in that sterile office was surreal. We barely spoke, each of us lost in our own thoughts. It was like standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to see if we'd fall or be pulled back to safety. During those days, my emotions were a tumultuous storm. I replayed our entire relationship in my mind. Our first date, the way she laughed at my bad jokes, the day I proposed. It all felt like a dream I couldn't wake from. And yet, I couldn't stop myself from wondering what my life would look like if the child was mine. Could I co-parent with someone I no longer trusted? Could I even bear to see her regularly, knowing what she'd done? When the results finally came in, I wasn't sure if I was ready to face them. Emily texted me to say she had them and asked if I wanted to meet to go over them together. I agreed, mostly because I couldn't stand the idea of waiting another second. We met at the same coffee shop, a neutral ground where emotions wouldn't spiral out of control. She was already there when I arrived, a sealed envelope in her hands. She looked nervous, her fingers fidgeting with the edges of the paper. I sat down across from her, my heart pounding in my chest. "Did you open it yet?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. She shook her head. "I thought we should do it together." I took a deep breath and reached for the envelope. My hands trembled as I tore it open, pulling out the crisp white paper. My eyes scanned the words, searching for the answer that would change everything. And there it was, in black and white. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. The world seemed to stop for a moment. I stared at the paper, the weight of the words sinking in. The baby was mine. My child. A part of me that I hadn't even known existed until now. Emily's voice broke the silence. Daniel, what does it say? I handed her the paper without a word. She read it, her eyes widening as she realized what it meant. Oh my God, she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. I don't even know what to say. I didn't either. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, shock, fear, anger, and beneath it all, a strange, unexpected flicker of hope. A child. My child. It wasn't how I had imagined becoming a father, but it was real. So what now? I asked, my voice quiet but firm. What happens next? Emily wiped her tears, her expression earnest. I want to do this right, Daniel. I want us to figure this out together, for the baby. I know I've lost your trust, and I don't expect us to just go back to the way things were, but I want to try. For them. Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I didn't know if I could ever trust her again, but I couldn't deny the responsibility I now had. This child didn't ask for any of this, didn't deserve to be born into a situation filled with betrayal and bitterness. If nothing else, I owed it to them to try. I'll be there for the baby, I said finally. But don't mistake that for forgiveness. This doesn't erase what you did, Emily. I understand, she said, her voice barely a whisper. And I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that I can be better, that I'm not the same person who walked away. I didn't respond. I couldn't. There were too many emotions swirling inside me, too many unanswered questions about what the future would look like. All I knew was that my life had just changed forever, and there was no going back. The weeks that followed were a blur of decisions and adjustments. Emily and I started talking more, though every conversation was laced with tension. I tried to keep our discussions focused on the baby, but the weight of our past was always there, lingering like a shadow. She shared updates about the pregnancy, doctor's appointments, ultrasounds, the small milestones that should have been moments of pure joy. Instead, they felt bittersweet. Every time I saw her, I couldn't help but wonder how we had gotten here, how we had let something so beautiful get so broken. One afternoon, she invited me to her next ultrasound. I hesitated, unsure if I could handle the intimacy of the moment, but ultimately, I decided to go. This child was mine, and I couldn't let my anger toward Emily overshadow that. Sitting in the dimly lit room, I felt a strange mix of emotions as the technician ran the wand over Emily's stomach. And then there it was, our baby's heartbeat, strong and steady. The sound filled the room, cutting through the tension like sunlight through a storm. For the first time in months, I felt something other than anger. I felt hope. Emily turned to look at me, her eyes filled with tears. That's our baby, Daniel, she whispered. I nodded, unable to speak. In that moment, it wasn't about us anymore. It wasn't about betrayal or pain. It was about the tiny life we had created, a life that deserved better than the mess we'd made. As the due date approached, Emily asked me a question I wasn't ready for. Would you be there when the baby's born? I hesitated. I don't know, Emily. I want to, but this isn't easy for me. She nodded, her expression understanding. I get it. Just think about it, okay? I want you to be there, but only if you want to. I thought about it long and hard, and when the day finally came, I found myself rushing to the hospital. I didn't know if it was the right decision, but I knew I couldn't stay away. When I arrived, Emily was already in labor. The hours that followed were some of the most intense of my life. Watching her go through the pain and seeing the sheer strength it took to bring our child into the world was something I would never forget. And then, finally, it happened. The room filled with the sound of our baby's first cry, and everything else faded away. The nurse handed me a tiny, wriggling bundle, and as I looked down at my daughter's face, I felt a wave of emotions I couldn't even begin to describe. She was perfect, innocent, and pure, untouched by the chaos that had brought her here. She's beautiful, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Emily reached out, her voice trembling. Daniel, thank you for being here. I didn't respond. I couldn't. All I could focus on was the tiny life in my arms, the little girl who had somehow become the center of my universe in an instant. The weeks after her birth were a mix of exhaustion and joy. Emily and I settled into a tentative co-parenting arrangement, and though things were far from perfect, we were both trying. She went out of her way to prove she was serious about making amends, not just for me, but for our daughter. She started therapy, cut ties with her old circle of friends, and focused on being the best mother she could be. As for me, I still struggled with the scars she left behind. Trust didn't come easy, and I wasn't sure if it ever would. But I knew one thing for certain. My daughter deserved a father who would always be there for her, no matter what. One evening, as I rocked her to sleep, Emily approached me. "I know I can't change the past, Daniel," she said softly, "but I want you to know how grateful I am for giving me another chance, even if it's just for her." I looked at her, the woman who had once been my everything and who had become a stranger. "I'm not doing this for you, Emily," I said quietly. "I'm doing this for her. She's what matters now." Emily nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. I know. The road ahead wasn't clear, and the wounds from the past hadn't fully healed. But as I looked at my daughter, peacefully asleep in my arms, I realized that sometimes life doesn't give you the answers you want. It gives you the chance to create something new, even out of the broken pieces. And for her, I was willing to try. As a reader diving into this heart-wrenching story of Daniel and Emily, I can't help but reflect on how a seemingly perfect marriage unraveled into betrayal, secrets, and eventual redemption of sorts. It's a tale that hits close to home for many, showing how love can blind us to warning signs and how one person's inner turmoil can shatter another's world. Let me break down my thoughts on why this happened, the red flags Daniel missed, the lessons about toxic relationships, the role of self-respect, and some practical advice for recovering from such a deep betrayal. First, why did this all happen? From what Emily reveals, it seems rooted in her own dissatisfaction and emotional immaturity. She felt suffocated by the stability of their marriage, craving excitement and validation outside of it. Instead of communicating her feelings or seeking help, like couples therapy, she turned to an affair with Brian, who represented something new and thrilling. This wasn't about Daniel being a bad husband. He sounds like a caring, steady partner. It was Emily's internal struggle, perhaps unresolved personal issues or a fear of commitment, that led her to self-sabotage. Affairs often stem from unmet needs, but here, she chose escape over effort, turning a solvable drift into full-blown destruction. It's a reminder that relationships require active work from both sides, and when one person checks out emotionally, disaster follows. The story is packed with red flags and warning signals that Daniel overlooked, probably because he trusted her deeply and didn't want to rock the boat. Early on, Emily became withdrawn. She stopped asking about his day, their laughter faded, and she spent more evenings out with co-workers. That Friday night, when she came home, late smelling of another man's cologne, that's a classic sign of infidelity. Evasive answers, avoidance of eye contact, and physical clues like scents or changed routines. Her phone habits might have been suspicious too, though not detailed here. Then, the abrupt request for a break, with the vague, "It's not you, it's me" line. That's often code for something deeper, like guilt over cheating. Daniel admits he let doubt fester instead of confronting it, which is understandable but risky. These signals predicted trouble, emotional distance, unexplained absences, and a lack of intimacy are all harbingers of a relationship in crisis. If ignored, they snowball, as they did here. This brings me to lessons on recognizing toxic relationships. Emily's behavior was toxic, not just the cheating, but the manipulation afterward. She left without full honesty, then reappeared a year later dropping bombshells like the affair and pregnancy, expecting Daniel to process it all. That's emotional whiplash, putting her needs, guilt relief, above his healing. Toxic dynamics often involve one partner gaslighting or withholding truth, making the other question their sanity. To spot this, look for patterns. Consistent dishonesty, blame shifting. She initially blamed needing space, and a lack of accountability. Healthy relationships thrive on open communication, mutual respect, and shared effort. If one person is always retreating or seeking fulfillment elsewhere, it's a sign the bond is unhealthy. Daniel's story teaches that love shouldn't mean tolerating secrecy or one-sided pain. It's okay to demand transparency early. Self-respect plays a huge role here, and Daniel's journey highlights how crucial it is. He describes himself as a ghost after she left, replaying memories and blaming himself for being too boring. That's a loss of self-worth, common after betrayal, where the victim internalizes the fault. But self-respect means recognizing your value independent of the relationship. Daniel could have asserted boundaries sooner, like insisting on answers that Friday night or seeking counseling when the distance grew. By the end, He regained some by focusing on the baby and not rushing forgiveness. I'm not doing this for you, Emily. I'm doing this for her. That's powerful. Prioritizing your own healing and principles over reconciliation. Without self-respect, people stay in toxic cycles. With it, you can walk away or rebuild on your terms. Finally, advice for recovering from betrayal like this. First, give yourself time. Daniel took months to process, and that's okay. Don't rush decisions amid shock. Seek professional help. Therapy helped Emily, and Daniel might benefit from it to unpack his anger and rebuild trust in himself. Surround yourself with support. Friends urged him to move on, which is solid, but lean on them without isolating. Focus on self-care, exercise, hobbies, journaling to reclaim your identity. For co-parenting scenarios like this, set clear boundaries early, legal agreements if needed, to protect your peace. And remember, forgiveness is for you, not them. It doesn't mean forgetting or reconciling. Daniel's flicker of hope came from the baby, showing that new purpose can aid healing, but only if you don't force old wounds to close prematurely. Ultimately, betrayal scars, but it doesn't define you. Use it as fuel to build a stronger, wiser version of yourself. This story left me hopeful yet cautious. Love can mend, but only with honesty and effort from everyone involved.